and you all helped to drive it forward. So I want to thank you all for supporting it and continuing that innovation and creativity that's needed to keep the little red dot on the map. So thank you all again. Let me go ahead and get started. It's going to be a really fun event because we have some real serious panelists here tonight with us, and I think that you're going to enjoy their feedback and their honesty with the questions that we have and will raise through the evening. So I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to just start with, I'm going to go by the list here, but we have Amit Anand. Amit is the founding partner of Singapore-based Jungle Ventures. Jungle invests and helps build each tech category across Asia and all the different leaders that are within that. The firm leads and invests across all early stages of startups and has investments in India, Singapore, Thailand, and other hotbeds of entrepreneurial activity in Asia. Jungle's recent portfolio includes companies such as India-based LiveSpace, thank you, Pocket, and ZipDial, which was recently acquired by Twitter, so it's fantastic. They're on the dial and on the money. Singapore-based TravelMob, which also was purchased by a NASDAQ-listed HomeAway, and Crayon Data, Malaysia-based iMoney, and Catch That Bus, Thailand-based Pomelo Fashion, and Australia-based Idrolo. Prior to this, Amit has spent over 12 years in senior management roles in tech startups and corporations across Asia. He's a Kaufman Fellow, which is fantastic, and has also served as Vice Chairman of Business Angel Network of Southeast Asia. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have Darius Chang at the end. Darius asked me to keep it short and sweet and to the point, so I will live to that. He's an amazing person and serial entrepreneur, and he's already had a company that's been acquired. I do have a tidbit about him, but he is the founder of 99.co.
How will that?
Yes, you should. It's a fantastic, honestly, it's one of the best. It's the newest way to find real estate rentals and properties here in Singapore, so you have to check it out. It's very good.
That's how you pitch. That's how you pitch.
Yeah, exactly. You wear the shirt that says 99.co and you pitch it. So well done. Darius also, along with Jeffrey Tiang, interestingly enough, were part of the NUS program. And I have to say this because it's very cool. They were part of the NUS program that went to the US through the Wharton School of Business, which is #1 in the United States. You can't get any better. And they participated in the entrepreneurial program. And that entrepreneurial program has had over 100 businesses start up with a lot of really amazing innovation and exits, from that. So Zopin was one of them. Your company. So it's exciting. So definitely take advantage of knowing that and looking into it, because I think that it does provide a world-class caliber of education and I guess camaraderie. So next up, Jeffrey Tiang. Since we started there, Jeffrey is passionate about leveraging technology to help companies innovate more successfully. Since founding PetSnap, fresh out of college, which is really a cool company too, Jeffrey's unique ability to merge technology, product design, strategy, and marketing has helped it become the fastest growing company in the industry. This is Pat, that's correct? Yeah. With operations across Singapore, China, and London. Jeffrey sets the vision for the company and its products and drives relentless execution across all fronts. Jeffrey earned a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering from NUS. So thank you. Just kidding. And Peter Brown I've known for a number of years, and he's been a mentor of mine, along with these gentlemen here. They actually have all been mentors. I just met Jeffrey, but I definitely also asking you questions. But Peter, I have known through JFDI, and I'll just go ahead and, we've known each other since 2012, and you've actually been here since 2012. He's been the exclusive presentation skills coach for all of the 50 teams that have actually progressed through the 100-day boot camp at JFDI, which is where we're sitting at right now. So thank you to JFDI for allowing Ty and us to all be here tonight. He also has clients in the corporate sector where he coaches both individuals and groups. Peter trained and worked extensively as a professional actor in Australia and has produced videos, campaigns, and events for corporate clients in Australia, Europe, USA, and throughout Asia. His experience in both the entertainment and business worlds gives him a unique perspective to teach people that they can develop and deliver impactful and engaging business presentations. So that's our panelists today. They've all had really great experience with the venture capital world and pitching and raising money. So without further ado, I guess we'll get started. So I set up a number of questions, and I know there's going to be an overarching, questions that you will have for yourself, which is like, how do I raise money? I've raised money. I've actually successfully raised money as a female founder here in Singapore, and it's a tough job, in my predicament, along with others. But it's a very tough job. So I've actually had the experience of knowing what it's like to raise a round of funding here in Singapore, as well as many of the different individuals here. And so these questions are actually a little bit tougher than what you would expect. So if you have pens and paper, feel free to take notes, because they really are like honest, heartfelt questions that we, as people that have gone through this, have dealt with. All right. So questions. We're going to start off easy, and then we're going to get a little bit tougher as we go. Okay. Question number one. Tell me about the typical best-case pitch process and setting. Tell me about the worst-case pitch process and setting. And how often, percentage-wise, do you see startups in the best case versus the worst case? And what can you do to save those that are the worst case? I'm going to start with you, Darius.
Oh.
Can
you guys okay with it? I need a mic.
Yeah,
okay, right?
You can use mic or you can... So?
I thought you said it would start off easy. That was not easy at all. Oh my god. Okay, so best pitching setting is to not have to pitch at all. There are very rare, occasionally companies that have so much traction or such strong team or such strong referrals that they just don't have to pitch at all, and VCs just go after them. So very rare, I think. Worst pitching. I'm going to leave that to you. I think he sees a lot of good advantages. I'm going to leave the negatives to comment. Worst pitching, I wouldn't know. Usually, I would imagine is if you can't capture the potential investor's attention for whatever reason, bad timing, bad place, not interesting enough concept in the first 30 seconds, maybe. What can you do to save it? Like, what can you do to save it afterwards? I think very little. Maybe only by really creating traction or creating velocity, and over time, then it's like a month later, 2 months later, you say, well, this is all the stuff we've done. And I think most investors are pretty logical and open to be proven that they have not paid attention to something that they have. They don't consider it wrong, it's just like, maybe I should have paid attention to it. So I think the best way to save it is just to show that you've done things.
Yes, milestones. That's good. That's really good. Okay, Amit, I think you actually would give some really great feedback, because you've seen, Amit's on the VC side, so he sees this every day. So what do you think are best case and worst case?
So the way I sort of understood the question was that it's essentially about the pitching process. What's the best pitching process?
Yeah.
And then when I read the question, I started looking back into the companies that we have invested in and the companies that we've passed on, and what was the sort of commonalities in each of those groups. And I think the one thing that stood out to me was that almost, as sort of Darius was hinting, almost all of the companies that we did invest in came through referrals. They were not cold calls, they were not meetings in events like this, although we would have met them that way. But the introduction always came through somebody that felt that this was a great team, great business, and that us as a fund should look at them. Almost all of those followed up with a very short, and I'm going to get a little bit more tactical here, so almost all of them followed with a very brief and precise and concise explanation of what they're doing and what they're looking for. And for 50% or sort of 70% of them, it didn't fit our bill, and we cut the conversation there. But for the remaining ones that went through the next phase, they sent us a deck, and we asked for a deck first, studied the deck, felt it was the right time to meet this team, to talk about sort of a funding opportunity, and then sort of move on to the real pitching, which is sit down and chat about it. So I think the reason I sort of share this is because I know that a lot of founders feel that they would prefer to sit in person with an investor and share their views, because the investor may not get your thoughts or may not understand. But when you get to the level where you're pitching to savvier investors and investors who are really, really busy, you know, your slide deck should convey, you know, your emotions, your traction, your goals, and become an invitation for them to feel, oh no, you know what, I need to meet this guy. You know, I don't care what it is, I want to talk to this guy and understand what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very true, and I think that, so you kind of, when you're looking at the process, you're looking at, I think you're right, I think referrals are important, and it is difficult, and we'll talk about how to deal with the cold call type of situation, because it does exist, and there is ways to manage that process. But I also think that there is a difference between a concept sell and a pitch versus a data pitch. And I think you're kind of hinting that you have, it's really good when you're really ready to start getting in front of investors to have that data really defined so that they understand it very quickly because they are so busy.
Yeah, and I think the difference between the concept pitch and the data pitch is also mostly around the stage of pitching. Like if you're a very early stage company, you know, how much data are you going to get, right? So at that stage, you're really pitching yourself and data about you or data about an opportunity, so you can sort of leave the data in there. And obviously as it gets sort of, you know, to the point at which people, like Darius is right now, you know, there's a lot more data that they can share, and then that becomes much more important, obviously.
That's great, thank you very much. You have had the process of looking at the process of people's pitch. What do you think, from your standpoint, when you are on the presenter standpoint, so what's that like? What are key takeaways, do you think, in that best case scenario versus worst case scenario that, you know, founders should do and shouldn't do?
I think it all comes down to clarity, really. You can have a very unclear pitch that can be pitched with great clarity. You can have a very clear pitch that can be pitched with no clarity. And in both cases, you're not going to get attention. So I think having a clear pitch and delivering it clearly is really important. And as you mentioned earlier, those things can be managed. You can manage your content. You can know when to keep it brief. You can know when to dive into detail. But you then know which levers to pull. I think Darius was saying earlier, which levers do we pull? And then in terms of your delivery, it's the same thing. When do I go for emotion? When do I go for credentials? When do I really dive into the detail? And looking and knowing your audience and knowing when they're with you and when they're not. And if they're not with you, do we back off and let them back into the conversation? Or if they are with you, do they have an appetite for more? So I think that understanding very, very clearly what you're doing and what you're delivering is really important.
Jeffrey, do you have any thoughts around it?
Yes, I think they cover pretty much a lot of it. I was just saying maybe some of the more memorable moments when I pitched. I remember once, that was many years ago for my seed funding. I was riding a motorcycle crossing the custom to Malaysia. Halfway there's a long jam, and then the call come in, the investor come in, need to ask a question. I have to pitch, I have to pull aside my motorcycle under the hot sun and then have to pitch on, oh, this is how we're going to do it. The other time, once I was in toilet, and call come in, I need to pitch again. And just last time, me and Darius were ordering dinner downstairs, and got the call come in, I have to pitch again. I would just say, you just have to be always ready to pitch, not only to investor, but to everyone. When I want to recruit good people, you have to pitch. And I talk to journalists, you have to make them excited about the story, you have to pitch. That's just my thing.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I've had similar moments where you feel like you're doing a dry pitch and all of a sudden you've got actual investors coming at you, you know, and that's an exciting time. Thank you all for your feedback on that. Staying with you, and given the fact that you talk about the pitch cycle and how often you are pitching, and essentially you really do have like 60 seconds, they say, to make or break the situation. If you are pitching visually or verbally, what are the key points or slides that you want to hit? Like, what is it that really will stand out at the end of the day in those 60 seconds?
I would say for me, definitely verbally as compared to visually is quite different. So verbally, you have to be able to paint a very vivid picture on the audience side that you can see in the 60 seconds, this is what I'm doing. For us, our space is usually difficult. We are in patterns intelligence, patterns intellectual properties, to a lot of investor like what are patterns, and now it's getting better, more awareness, but the last few years like patterns, like what pattern. So I had to really, it was a really tough time for me to say this is what we do. So I think finding analogy helps, telling a quick story helps, at least for me. Visually, of course, then you can use some nice graphic to show your momentum, what you are doing, at least for me.
Okay. I'm going to stop and ask, just to help clarify. Most of the people here may be interested in like Series C rounds and Series A, most likely. So think of it from that perspective too, in that 60 seconds, because a lot of the people that are here probably have not yet pitched or just starting to pitch, may have had experience pitching. So, Peter, what do you think from a presentation standpoint?
Look, I come back to clarity. When you one of the guys around here has a pitch which is, we are building an application that will make American Express obsolete. So that's his opening line. And he has got introductions to the guy who runs Mustafa's, for example, who's like, I don't know who you are, I don't know what your background is, but I want to know about something that's going to make American Express obsolete. So he gets the opportunity then to substantiate his claim. So it comes back to that very, very clear, well, you have to have a very clear understanding of what you're doing. You have to have that. You know, we've so many times seen founders come into here, JFDI, on day one, and they go on and on and on and on and on, and you don't understand a thing about what they're doing. So, do they really understand the nexus, the absolute nub, the essence of what they're doing? And I think that has to be your starting point. You have to have that. And to get there, one of my favourite quotes is Thomas Friedman, which is to simplify accurately, you must understand deeply. And I think you have to do that with your own business, with your own concept. You have to be able to simplify it accurately so that people get it and want to go with you on the journey.
I think that's good. I'm going to lead into that. I have a very, what I think is a complicated business model, and I get it very well on the technical side, but I suck when it comes to explaining it from the non-technical side, from the layperson side to the people that even the partners that we pitch to the people that we pitch to. So how does understanding it really, really well, but trying to make the investor who is not necessarily, the investors are versed at funding. They're versed in their categories, but they're also versed in primarily funding, in my mind. How do you take a savvy investor who's great at investing money to understand that story when you're so technical that it's still a bit complicated to put it into a layperson's non-technical standpoint? How does that person do that in that 60 seconds?
They can't.
Yeah,
So I think it sort of goes back to choosing your battles. And I think, you know, as Pete was referring to, you need to know your target audience, that who are you talking to, and how savvy are they, and how deeply would you need to pitch in the first case for them to understand, or how superficially you need to be. So, you know, I personally believe that in an industry, you know, like ours, which is about disrupting using technology, disrupting other industries using technology, you've got to find people who are believers and not people who are analytical, too analytical, especially at the seed and the Series A stages that we're talking about. So my personal experience has been that I like to hear people, and this is kind of you know, slightly in disagreement with you. You know, if I would have heard a pitch that would have said, I'm going to make American Express obsolete, I would never take a meeting. Because, you know, how many times has that happened in the world? So, you know, I would want to have one more level of detail straight up. And, you know, let me make the inference that you're going to kill American Express. Unless you've already killed them or you're way out on killing them, then it's okay, tell me that. But otherwise, I like to hear, but to your point regarding clarity, I like to hear very clearly what your business what your problem is, what is the problem you're solving, what is the one unique, unfair advantage you have in solving that problem, and then at least one data point in that 60 seconds. And, just to get me excited enough to say, okay, let's sit down and have a more detailed chat.
Great, thank you. Darius, what about you?
That is unless if you hear from the previous chairman of American Express and say, this guy had the technology to disrupt American Express, isn't that right? Yeah. Who says it? That is a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The reference, comes back to point, right?
So the question was
The 60
the 60
seconds that
seconds,
you've pitched enough, and maybe if you don't want to answer that one, I'll go into the next one, which is how many pitches on average does it take to start getting interested investors to fund you? How many dry pitches does it take? That's always the question to get to the center of the lollipop. How many times do you have to meet investors, see investors, actually pitch to them before you start securing money?
I don't know if I have answers to that. I don't know, do you have answers to that? I don't know if I have answers to that.
I agree with you, but I would say if you've not got it right in the first 2 or 3 times, then there's a serious problem. I don't know, do you agree? That in the first 1 or 2 iterations, you would know whether the guy in front of you is getting your message or not. And then, if you haven't sort of taken care of that at that point, then you really look for a co-founder, who's good at pitching as well as good at business. But yeah, I would say it's hard to predict otherwise on how many pitches it takes before you get your money.
To different guys. So let's say to the same person, but to different ones.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any answer to that, but I think it also depends on the business. So assuming you already know what you're doing deeply and you can explain it clearly, so that's kind of the first assumption. The second assumption is your audience, you pick an audience who knows what you're talking about. If you pitch a biotech company to somebody who does consumer web, you're never going to get through, doesn't matter how many times you pitch. But let's pitch those 2 assumptions. Then in that case, you should get interest right in the first meeting. You may not get a term sheet, you may not get an investment, but you should get interest, and I think it's easy to recognize and understand interest. If you recognize and understand interest in the first meeting, then maybe another, I would go on average to at least 5 to 10 investors, kind of in the same time frame. I would set a time frame to say, this is the period I'm going to fundraise. We're going to at least 5 to 10 investors, just to create competition. Because investors needs to be competitive as well. You need to give them the fear of missing out, that I have other options if you're not investing when you're done, right? So I would say at least 5 to 10, maybe more. I tend to do actually do more than that.
I found, and I don't know if it's, because I was a solo founder, but it took me, I've dry pitched probably 100 times, honestly, and it's just the luck of the draw, I think, sometimes. Sometimes people get it, and sometimes people don't, and maybe you can improve it, and maybe you can, and maybe you shouldn't be seeking funding, but I went through the process, and I learned a lot through the process, so in my mind, it's good to continue pitching and honing and tweaking, but I think you're right. I think it really depends on who you meet, and why you're meeting them. And I think a lot of times we make the mistake of going in too quickly and just, shooting and hoping that something sticks. So I do agree with you. How about you, Jeffrey? What are your thoughts around how many times you tend to pitch?
I would say, this made me recall one entrepreneur actually mentioned this in her blog post that she draw a graph, x-axis and y-axis. X-axis is the time frame, timeline. Y-axis is the progress. So she mentioned that every time you meet the investor, you pitch, and then you follow up, your startup should have progress. Every time you meet, I have some new progress. So the investor know you. Some of the investor, they will actually renew them since a few years back. So they saw that, hey, this guy is still around, the company is still around, they're still making progress, cool. So I think making progress is important. And thinking for my own experience, during the early days when I pitch a lot, I think people just, no one buys it, no one. So, but and now recently that I think is instead of me going after investor, they come to us. And what is the difference? I mean, of course, I improve a bit of my presentation skill, but I don't think it improved a lot over the time. I think the main difference is because you really got substance. The company actually had progress. They actually show real numbers. The numbers speaks for itself. That I would think is the most important thing. We can keep pitching, but at the same time, your business must show real substance. That is my take on it.
And I think that's a lesson learned for me to take home is that a lot of times I failed to do that. Like I pitched once, I never went back to the company to show progress. So it was more of a formality to pitch, and I was just shooting to see what stock. And I think you're right. I think that if had I gone in and produced an XY axis, type of frame, and said, here's how my company is doing in this timing, and here's reasons why I should go back and sprinkle that back to the investors, there's a likelihood that you're building a rapport to be able to secure. There's a reason, for them to maybe potentially, call you and say, yeah, I'm ready now. So that's a really good thing, because if you don't do that and you're constantly being too formal, you're just gonna get burnt by the whole process. It's a tough process. So that's a really valid point. So thank you very much. Do you want to add anything to that, Peter, at all, as far as the pitch? How many times it takes?
Well,
You've seen a lot of people. Pitch.
It does take, I mean, the process does take a long time, because I think a lot of it is about what I was saying before about understanding your own content. We spoke recently with some visitors from Norway who were pitching to Singapore potential partners, and one of the conversations we had is you can talk probably for 2 or 3 hours about your business. Like if you think of that as a big reservoir of knowledge, and in this case you've got 6 minutes. So what are you going to choose? What are you going to choose to tell these people in a short space of time? And then what we do here at JFDI is we have a simple structure that has been developed through Techstars in the US, and it starts with what is the problem? What is your solution? And if you think about those two things, what is the problem and what is the solution? At that stage, it's fantasy. Here's a problem, we've got a brilliant solution. Until you get traction. So traction then becomes a very, very strong proof point, and now you're getting into the real substance of your presentation. What is the problem? What is the solution? And here are the people who are already using our product. And then we go from there into the market that those people represent in terms of an addressable market, a business model, the commercial transaction that you're going to make with that market, and then why are you the people that can deliver this business model to this market with this solution? And then what is your vision beyond that? And then what are you looking for in terms of ask? So a 6-minute pitch, that's the structure that we apply. And it's a proven structure, and it covers all the bases, hopefully, that the investors are looking for. So just to clarify, problem, solution, traction, market, business model, team, vision, ask. And if you think it through, it's a really, really strong narrative.
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to add something, because I was thinking about this. One of the things that I remember quite clearly is that pitching to investors is not an exercise of making sure everybody likes you. You're finding that one investor who's willing to give you money. And what I've understood over the years are that investors actually are very, very different creatures. Especially professional investors. You've been pitching to VCs, they have their own agendas and their own objectives, and they're very, very greatly different. Like our business, for example, in 99.co, we don't make a single dollar of revenue. Don't plan to in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe. And we're going to take tens of millions of dollars of capital to get to where we need to be. That's a business that I think there's less than 5 people in Singapore would be winning the fund. If I go out and pitch to 100 people, I would get a 95% rejection rate, which is absolutely normal. So that's a very different thing that I kind of learned.
I think you're right. I think that when you look at it from that standpoint, you have to really understand and identify the right investor, in your own business model. when you are thinking about starting your business. You know, it's not just about starting a business sometimes, it's also about like, how am I going to get this business off the ground to support what your efforts are. And knowing and identifying who those key people are straight away will help through that process as well. So I think you're right, identification is critical. When it comes to pitching, some of us have pitched in the United States. I've pitched in the United States twice now. Some of us have pitched in Asia. I've pitched in Asia too. I've pitched in Australia. So what are the differences in pitching between, if you're here in Asia and you want to go global and you are looking for funding in, you know, here versus in the United States, what's that pitch like? Jeffrey knows.
I pitched in London, pitched in China, pitched here, pitched in US before. Definitely, I would say quite different. Just share a story. 2 weeks ago, I was just in SF getting pitching to one of the investors, got the term sheet. So look at the term sheet, look at the figures, wow, cool. So we negotiate a bit, negotiate. And throughout almost like finish the discussion, suddenly realized my partner, hey, that is in Sing dollar, not USD. How come you didn't call me earlier? I told her, I thought everything in USD. No, your previous term sheet is, the previous round is in Sing dollar, and the modeling that you said to me is Sing dollar. So yeah, we tell you in Sing dollar. Big difference, 25% difference. So this is just a side story. So for me, I think in US, at least I would say is a fact. It's a bit sad. I think they prefer Western company. If you are positioned as an Asian company, you definitely have some discount. At least in my opinion, and a lot of entrepreneurs I know. If you go to US as an Asian company, Asian market, they won't value that as high. And very difficult also during seed stage and Series A. So both during, I went to US 2 years ago to pitch for Series A. I didn't get it. I think they want you to, and most of them they want you to be in the state. They want within 10 miles, 20 miles, they can drive to you, talk to the team. They want you to be there. And I would say for us, at least from our experience, Series B onwards, then I think you have a better chance. At least from my experience, you can get a US investor because you already have proved the model, everything proven, your revenue driving. So investor then in that case willing to invest in that kind of company. Then then Europe will be more conservative in my opinion. Europe investor, and here of course it's getting better. It's more conservative compared to US. US investor, the way they invest is their fear of losing out the next big thing. The investor here and European will tend to see that you have to prove something like can I really make money out of this? You have to prove a lot of things to them before they invest in you. But US investor is, I would say at least now the market sentiment is more money chasing after entrepreneur. There are a lot of money around. They're fearing losing the next Facebook. So that is the sentiment. China said China a lot of money. A lot of money in China. You're hungry enough, you definitely can find out. That is fine.
Thank you, that's really good. How about anybody else and their thoughts around Evan, why don't you give it a go?
So, in my personal experience, I'm just thinking from a US investor's hat. And, I guess if somebody came to me from Singapore, pitched to me a startup, the first question in my head is going to be, why are you pitching to me? Can't you find money locally? And, if you can't find money locally, then how bad are you? So I think you got to think about those things, because investors do think about that. Because, our government and our ecosystem does a great job of publishing Singapore as the tech hub, as the startup hub of Asia, and, we are hopefully getting there. But you know what? People, read that and believe that there is a lot of money available here, right? So why would a startup need my money if I'm a US investor? So I'm just going to flip that over on the other side and say, if you are a startup and you want to go and raise money from the US investor, have a fantastic reason for doing that, right? Be ready to tell them, you know what, it's true, there are 20 investors in Singapore, but here are the 3 things I need from the investor and they can't give me this. And these three things can be given only by you. And if you can't do that, then I bet all that nonsense talk about investing in local companies only and we won't invest outside of our what is it called? I should be able to write a pipe to my startup kind of, things will all go out of the window. I think you need to be able to connect to the investor on why you want them and why they should invest in you. I think the fact is that, I agree with Jeffrey. I think it's going to be harder at early stages to get that investment. But I think AngelList and their kind of platforms are going to come and make it easier for you to do that. But again, the same lesson applies. Somebody on AngelList is just not going to put money in you just because you're there. He has to relate to you, whether it's a passion-based relation, he's passionate about the same spaces you're doing, or it's a, diversity relation, he's interested in spending some money in Singapore. You have to find that vibe. And then you can be much more successful in raising money from outside your home countries. We invest in a lot of startups across the region. So we have got investments in India, in Singapore, in Australia, Thailand, Malaysia, Japan. And when we look at companies coming to us, there is a reason they come to us is because we can help them scale regionally, and not because they can't find money locally.
Correct, and I think that's also important when you're looking at VCs. Look to see at the VCs that have the arms, and the hands in the local markets, so that if you are trying to network yourself out of those local or outside of your current market, you can also leverage off of them in those local markets while essentially staying with you, which is what you were talking about. They do in America, they don't like to invest in Singaporean companies or outside of US companies a lot of times because it's not close enough to them. The time zone differences are difficult. Having that type of management oversight is more difficult and cumbersome. And they do ask the question, why aren't you looking local? So appreciate that very much, very true. What about you? What do you think, Darius?
Just one quick one to add. The one tactical thing, which is US VCs never cares about Southeast Asian market. They don't give a shit. Just forget about it. If you're doing Southeast Asian market, forget about it. Half the funds, on the other hand, that are based around here, only cares about the domestic market.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah, no, that's very true. We're actually, just on a side note, my business is actually doing a round, potential, we're investigating doing a round where we have a holding company here in Singapore, but we also are thinking about doing a new co and buffering ourselves in Australia with local Australian business partners to protect the current holdings and give leverage to that new co with investors that are very local to that market. So there are ways to manage the process of raising capital in markets that may not be your home country, because Singapore is a small hub. I mean, it's 5 million and a teeny tiny dot. You cannot expect to expand here. So unless you just are, 99.co. You can't expect to expand here. It can happen. Plus other regional markets. So I get it. But those are things to consider. Any other thoughts around the U.S. versus Asia you want to add? Yeah, sure.
One of the things I've noticed, and maybe hopefully it will help some of you, is that I've seen some startups go to the US and raise money in their sort of early rounds, by hook or crook, and get sort of really high valuations. And then, they end up sort of coming back to Asia for their next rounds and don't end up getting valuations higher than that, and that becomes a big challenge to overcome. So I think you got to be conscious about these things, that raising money is a multiple times process, and just sort of securing the very high valuations in the first go by there are ways to do that, right? There are smart people in the room. Is not always the best option. You got to be very, very careful about those kind of things. And I've seen 2 startups really struggle because of that, and hence I wanted to share this and make sure that people realize that sometimes has a downside to them.
That's very true. High rollers doesn't mean that it's good.
So I'll vouch for Amit. This is not the VC trying to press down the valuation. We're not really about our valuation at all. We agree with that, it's true.
No ulterior motive.
I totally believe you.
Very true, very true. I think that brings us to our next question, which is valuation and understanding the dreaded valuation term in the conversation of pitching. A lot of investors will throw you and ask you, what is your thoughts around your company's valuation? How do you go about handling that question when it happens at different stages of your business? Because it will happen at different stages during each pitch. Jeffrey, let's start with you. We'll go straight down.
So for valuation, this one, yeah, recently I had this experience of it's a game. I mean, if you can get your first term sheet, then after that is how you play each other out. You always investor have this, assuming your business fundamentals are already there, the numbers okay. You go to next investor, say I got a term sheet, but I really love to working with you. I mean, yeah, then you get another term sheet. Let's get higher number, you go back to the first investor. I really love working with you. The other guy offered this amount, but can you do something? We come to middle ground. I mean, this is just but I would say a lot of times really you need to have lots more leverage. Have lots more leverage, and one day the price, a lot of time is irrational. I would say yes, they started with this is your number, 10x, 5x is your projection, blah blah blah. And one day when they actually decide to do the deal or make you that number offer is I would say largely irrational, at least in my opinion.
Very good.
This is beyond my experience.
I'll have the last word on this.
Yes.
What was the question again?
The question is understanding the valuation during the pitch, and Jeffrey brought up good time to talk about it is during the term sheet, period. But what about maybe beforehand and then during the term sheet? And how do you use that to leverage, your own position?
So I guess I don't know what the audience in what stage they're at.
Think of them as seed to first round.
Yeah, so for seed, one of the things that I think became popular and useful nowadays is to do the convertible note, where you can just basically avoid the question altogether. I won't go into details, but convertible note helps you avoid the questions sort of a little bit. I don't know whether you like it as a VC, but maybe not.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't bother us as much, and I think I try and keep it short. We typically have a valuation discussion in the first meeting, so you've got to be in the range. If you're not in the range, then you're wasting each other's times. So I think make sure that you've designed the conversation for that to be discussed. As VCs, as Jungle, we first meeting we do have the discussion on what are you expecting to raise and what are you looking to value. And if it's so far off, then we tend to not spend time. But if it's in the range, then to Jeffrey's point, there is the tangible element to it. So there's always the multiples and so on and so forth, especially on the late stage companies. And then there is the intangible. How desperate is a VC to fill that space? How great a team are you? How can you sell yourself as the best option on the planet?
Yeah.
So then that kicks in eventually.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Going back to your earlier point about the high rollers in the States creating a high valuation, and then screwing up the next round essentially when it came time to actually reevaluate the valuation. I think that should be something as a consideration. When you're dealing with concepts in the seed stage, it can be tough. You may not be prepared to answer those questions, so you have to know, there has to be some data behind your concept. So you have to go prepared and armed to be ready to talk about that and allow the VC to partner and communicate and discuss that openly with you. Where you say, well, these are my data points, what do you think? And this is what I think is, things that we should look at. How does this value itself? Because sometimes with a concept you don't know. Just because you think you're going to disrupt American Express and become the $10 billion company, well, maybe you're not.
I'll probably, as you were speaking, something else sort of came to my mind. I'll probably share it, hopefully helpful. One of the things we do with most of our investments, maybe all of them, is once we've decided we're going to do something with this founder, we do sit down as part of our diligence and project the cap table out to exit. So across every round, where do you expect to be with the next round? What kind of milestones do you expect to hit? What kind of money do you want to raise at that point? What happens then? What happens then? And life will never turn out that way. Obviously, in an entrepreneurship environment, everything changes in 6 months. But it will bring you and your investor on the same page in terms of where eventually everybody is going to see value or not. And I think there are so many instances where we have, in that process, realized how far away we are from how the entrepreneur is thinking about the business, and hence maybe this is not a great opportunity for us to be part of.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to get into the actual pitch and meeting next. So they've been meeting me and Jeffrey and Darius are out meeting, and you've been preparing people to meet on it. I'm going to ask a two-part question. I'm going to combine them together. Does arrogance, because we always see like a bit of arrogance and air of mystique and this like, I am here, kind of moment when you're there to pitch. Does that belong in the pitch, really? And then two, gender aside, talk to me about confidence in your pitch and how to come off always sounding smart and ready without being a wanker. So I'm going to start with the Aussie here who gets what that means.
This is a really tricky question. We have had guys come to JFDI and pitch very arrogantly at the beginning, and we work with these guys for 100 days. So what we have to do is turn off our bullshitometers, if you know what I mean. Because sometimes you think, this guy's just bullshitting, he's arrogant, he's appearing overconfident, and you have to turn off that filter that doesn't like that, and see beyond that to the substance. That's a really important thing for us to do, is not to dismiss people because their arrogance is overwhelming. And I think what that essentially means is that you're looking for their substance. You're really looking for the idea there. And so I think that I don't really have a problem with arrogance. I have a problem when there's arrogance and no substance, because that is a hollow sound signifying nothing, as Shakespeare put it so succinctly. On the gender side,
we're not looking at it from the gender side yet, just looking at it from like confidence and having, sounding smart and ready.
Yeah, confidence, sounding smart and ready. Look, again, we take a long-term view with the people at JFDI because we've got a long time. And what we do is we help these people who are not confident, and we have people who come here who are not confident, and we help them find that they can be confident in themselves. We help them find that by giving them a lot of experience to develop confidence. That's one side of it, but the other side of it is what is their content. And once people become very, very confident in their content, and it goes back a little way to the point we were discussing before about valuations, is that you can say we've got $1 billion industry. This is $1 billion opportunity. We've got 200 million customers that we can reach, and then the questions are going to come. And if you can't answer those questions, you've left yourself up as a hot air balloon with $1 billion industry and 200 million customers that really aren't there, because you can't answer those questions, because you haven't done the homework to really understand whether it is $1 billion opportunity or there are 200 million customers. So I think that really doing your homework, working hard, knowing your business, knowing what your business model is, knowing what your market is, really knowing that stuff suddenly gives you confidence when you're telling your story. And then whether you are arrogant in that process, I don't think that's an issue. Because if you can substantiate, and if you are correct, and you are intelligent, and you have done your homework, and you are sharp, arrogance doesn't become an issue. It does not become an issue at all, because it's the content, it's the vision, and it's the determination that becomes the issue.
Thank you. Really smart. Thank you very much. Jeffrey, what do you think?
I think what works for me from my own experience is just be yourself and be real. I think, yes, of course, Americans typically will like people who project their confidence. I mean, this is quite typical. But think about it, in the pitches that investors see in a few days is more than your whole lifetime that you have to pitch. They have seen more pitches, more teams that you pitch. They've seen so many business plans. The moment you say something or do something, they will know, they will have already seen it. So they have very strong BS detector, never know whether you are, all investors are very smart, intelligent individuals, they are. So I think just be yourself, be real, like this is what I'm doing, this is, I would say even this, at least for me, it works for me to a certain extent. In US, everyone is very confident, like I just, if let's say be myself, be sincere, then oh, this cool, this guy, a bit different. I mean, it might even differentiate yourself, but I think it's more just like what Peter mentioned, just really know your style, be yourself, be real. I mean, when all investors know when we say $1 billion, blah, 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 I mean, they know what you want. I mean, that is not happening yet. So just yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Darius, thoughts around it? Around how to be confident?
So I think confidence or arrogance and trying to pick the right level of confidence is a very elusive concept. So I would try not to think about it if I was pitching it all. Like I wouldn't like try to gauge how confident should I be, right? What I would do instead is to be really prepared and really choose to know what I really know, what I really believe in, and be also very clear what I don't know and what I really just don't know. So to give you a story of how we pitch, for example, this actually happened, right? Like, so investors ask, what is the market size? You know, what are we going after? And I truly believe that property search, at least for Southeast Asia, and even for 2 countries in Southeast Asia, is going to give you $1 billion. And I truly believe in that. And investors ask, so how are you going to scale across, like, I don't know, different regions, different countries, different culture, different income level, blah, 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 different internet behavior? And our answer is, I have no fucking idea, right? So I have no fucking idea, but we're going to do it, right? So, and that's kind of just like being honest and knowing what you do believe and what you don't believe, and really just sticking your foot into it and saying, this is what we think. So I think that's how I would think about it, rather than trying to gauge how confident should I be.
Yeah, I think that honesty is important. And being honest with that, the fact that you actually have no clue is A-okay, because ultimately they do look at the team a lot. They want to invest in a team and believe in you, and they will help you through that process. So quirks and all are actually a good thing to have up front, unless I'm wrong. I mean, you've seen them, you've invested in them.
I think all sort of great points and sort of reflect the same point that arrogance will not get you anywhere, to be honest. I think the way to also probably think about it is, why does somebody be arrogant? Is when he thinks that the person on the other side of the table is dumber than he is. And I think there are chances, 9.9 out of 10 times that the person on the other side of the table is smarter than you are. That's why you want his money. So I just don't think that arrogance has any real upside, but it's got some serious downsides. So why sort of take a tool like that when you're operating with people? The other way to think about it is, and this has been talked about a lot, that getting an investor is like marriage, right? It's like dating. It's you're going to get in bed with somebody for 7, 10, 12 years, and I can't imagine you getting into a long-term relationship in your personal life on the basis of arrogance. So why would you do it in this? So it just doesn't make sense at all.
If I can add something, you mentioned honesty, and what honesty on both sides leads to is trust. And you mentioned relationship, and you need to build trust with the people who are going to invest in you. And so I love the fact that Darius is saying to them, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, because then it's an honest answer. It allows the investor and the startup to go on a journey together, if they decide to be together, to go into that marriage. And it needs to be that. So you're not asking for their money. I mean, that's really not it. It really is a relationship that is long term, and so it must be built on very strong principles.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to go through these next questions relatively quick, just because we're kind of running out of time. I'm going to go ahead and just ask maybe 2 more. What is the most important? Actually, I'm going to ask one that's really important. Now, thinking gender, thinking about gender. And thank you so much for the ladies that are here. I'm like so pleased to see that we have a packed house of females. So thank you very much. It's really, really encouraging. Now thinking gender, how does a female stand out when it comes to pitching and approaching investors? Because I think it is different. You don't see it often. So how you stand out already, but how do you go about really standing out to be able to secure funding?
I'll pick up on that with a very simple answer: by being female is the first answer. By being female, you're standing out. And one of the reasons I say that is that in our most recent batch, it was all male, and there was one female, and there was a feeling from the investor community was with one of the groups who had a female founder in the group was, why don't you pitch? Why don't you pitch? And so the appetite was, I want to see somebody different. I want to see a different thing happening here. So I don't have much more to add than that because there's a whole sense of other issues. But if you're sensing that there's a barrier to entry, you're wrong. There is an appetite to hear different stories. There is an appetite from investors just to listen to a female voice, to hear that side of the story. Where are the opportunities that you can tell me about that all of us guys maybe don't know about? So I think there is an appetite there already.
I'll ask you as a VC, since you deal with it a lot.
Yeah, and we have invested in female women CEOs. So, the founder of DocDoc, the founder of ZipDial, in fact, in one of the companies where we were looking for replacing the founder with the CEO, we chose to go with a female, women CEO because we felt that she was better at dealing with the situation they were in, where we had too many strong personalities and you needed somebody who could manage that without having her own ego come into play. So it's a tricky subject. You can say we are gender neutral, and even that can be, oh my God, you don't do anything for women. On the other hand, you could say that we are biased towards women, and then people will go, oh my God, you're being extra cautious. And so it's a very tricky subject, but I tend to agree. I think, especially in Asia, I think we are better off than US in this matter. And as a statistical data point, in a place like India, at the grassroots levels, we have a lot more women in engineering than, almost 10 to 20 times than in US. So I think we probably don't have that issue, and let's not make it an issue. I think let's go with a meritocracy-based society, and if women do face challenges, then they need to speak up. They need to talk about it and make sure that that's not acceptable.
That's fantastic. Okay, I thank you all very much for joining us tonight. I guess we'll transfer it over to Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll open it up to the floor on any other questions that you all want to ask at this point. Yes, the person in the back. If you want to stand up.
The question, I guess, most relevant to what's in it for you as an investor? Is it times? Is it just the money part? Is it the ability to create Google, for example, or a combination thereof?
That is a great question. What do you think? What do you think investors look for? Returns. So you think returns are the key drivers for most investors? I think that's hygiene. I think you wouldn't be doing this if you were not getting returns. What else do you think are the key drivers for most of the people?
We associate it with something which is going to make a difference. So I guess you're talking about etc., which are looking at areas which are possibly contagious, possibly contagious.
Yeah, it's kind of that, right? I think it's I'm a failed entrepreneur, by the way. So when I shut down my business and lost my investors' money, I realized I was horrible at managing people. But I really wanted to be on the cutting edge of everything. And I realized that the best way to be on the cutting edge of that and not get associated with managing people was to work with really, really sharp founders. Unfortunately, I've not been able to yet work with him, but the goal is to work with really cool people and help them become better and help them achieve something. So I think there's a little bit of wanting to be part of something really good And the definition of good could be, hard. The definition of good could be impactful and many other things. Return on investment is hygiene. That has to be there.
Yes, in the front. Yep, you.
Yeah. So you guys talked about sort of getting really high first valuation and how that can be a negative. Can you talk a little bit more about the dynamics behind that? I mean, I understand that when you choose an investor, there's a strategic element, and certainly the valuation isn't the only thing you should focus on. But if you normalize for strategic fit, for example, why is a high valuation negative later on?
Maybe I'll take it because I made the comment. I was talking about a particular case of a startup which went to the US just to get higher valuations than they were getting in Asia, and then come back and then raise the next rounds of capital here. So this particular case is very different because there is a significant gap in terms of valuations that are given out by investors in Asia, and it's changing, but it's still there as compared to US. And if you sort of benchmark yourself very, very high and you come back and you want the next round here, even if the guy is going out of his limits to give you a better valuation, he's never been able to match up. So you're just set up for failure there. Coming back to, you could even get higher valuations here, and there are situations where you do get those valuations, and there's nothing wrong with that. What you need to be mindful about is that you need to continue to deliver that value. Is that if somebody is buying you at a certain price, he's expecting to see that performance in the next 12 to 24 months that you're going to be with him, and do what you want. You will need more money, which means you have to go back to him or the other investor. And if you've not delivered on that promise, then you're setting yourself up against failure. So, as I said, we always discuss valuation in the first meeting. If it's high, low, we sit down, we get an agreement. It doesn't matter what number that is eventually, but just you have to be able to deliver on that promise.
Any other questions? Yes, all the way back.
I hear talk about teams all the time, and as somebody that's starting a company, attracting a team while you're bootstrapping. I mean, it's nice to say, hey, we look at a great team, but getting that team when you can't pay people is, how does that work?
I don't really have an answer for that. I think it's a bit of a schizophrenic situation.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But that's exactly where the gems emerge through the test of that fire, right? So if you truly believe in it, and I think that's what investors look for, like given all the adversary conditions you're in, you still manage to get a good team together, make traction and build stuff. Maybe a full-time, maybe a not, doesn't matter.
We built something without the team. So that's what I'm saying. We're at a point where we're getting ready to launch a site, and we think we have a good idea, of course.
How do you build something without a team?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is there's three of us working on this thing. And
But that's a team, right?
none of us are I'm not an IT guru that has all this 40-year-old guy with 3 kids, and my wife and my partners are IT guys. That's our team. That's not something that's going to attract a VC. They're going to look at that and say, this guy, he's had a career at this for his whole life. All of a sudden, he switched onto this, and he's going to this. So,
Do you have any stigma on that?
I'll come back to that too. But it's non-negotiable. That's the team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, that's the team. You three guys are the team. Where it can become an issue is if you don't have the expertise to follow through on what you're doing. So you're talking about yourself and your wife and an IT guy. So the IT guy is one of your founders. We're looking at a group at the moment which is a husband and wife combination, and they're very, very good, but they're outsourcing the IT side of the business, and the business is an internet business, which means that they need IT expertise within their team, which they don't have.
And that's what I'm saying, is when you're bootstrapping and you need that IT expertise from outside, you don't have the money to, I can't afford to pay a guy $8,000 a month.
Yeah, but you said you have an IT guy.
Yeah, he's a partner.
Yeah, exactly. So that's your team.
But bridging the gap is what I'm saying. Like my management gap, I have if you're looking at, as an investor, at a team, there's a gap
answer your question from my side. I'm a solo founder,
Yeah.
and I don't have an IT background either.
Yeah, exactly.
And I still got funded. So it can be done. You just have to know your business. You just have to. And you have to sell how it's being done. And the fact that you hire people or intern them or outsource them, but you better know your business. Yeah, so it can be done. You can get funded.
Yeah, so I think that's such an important thing, but you know, I wanted to hear that's why I was interested to talk to you, is how did you do it as a single person with it,
Yeah.
walked into this thing?
I had funding. I had private. We had family funding, so we supported ourselves in that bootstrap period as I grew the business. So I'm different in that sense.
I'm able to do that as well, and I don't need anything right now, but I'm thinking in the future if I want to scale up, I don't have to
I promise you will.
Yeah.
Need lots of money.
So let me try and break it down here. So you're looking for your first round of investment now,
I'm not right now.
but you would. So you've not raised money so far, right?
Yeah, right now we're able to bootstrap a few.
And you think, let's hypothetically, what kind of capital do you want to raise? 100K, 500K, something like that?
Around next one was maybe 500.
Just 500K, right? And so my thinking about a situation like this is there are 2 points. Number one, I think no VC is going to invest in a company or a team which is incomplete. So if people are telling you that it's okay and you can get there and you will get the VC money, they're bullshitting you. So we will never invest in a team that doesn't have the right management team already in place, right? So number one. But the point is that you have that opportunity to get there. And my belief, and I'm open to people challenging me on this, is that the angel investor community and the super early stage investor community is far more tolerant of the fact that you are an incomplete team and you need the money to build a team to get there where you're ready for the VC.
Yeah, I mean, we already raised $200,000, so we've got the angel stuff done.
What? There you go. I think what you need to be sure about is that if people challenge you on who you need to hire, how you're going to manage that talent, is that as a founder you become really smart about that.
But it's a chicken or the egg. You gotta have the money to hire the people to, you know what I'm saying?
No, that's what I'm saying. So when you sit down with an investor and you're telling them, listen, I need the money to go and hire these people, what a savvy investor is going to look at you and see whether you're going to hire the right people and do you have the skills to be able to identify the right people. And eventually then the VC will come in and he'll obviously want to see the right people already in place. There will be some gaps, obviously there will be people that you'll have to add to your team and over time you will find more people to add to your team and you will find more people. But technology is something that is hardly compromised.
I'd like to add one thing to that
Really?
really quick. I think he's hitting on a very clear point, which is raising money isn't just to raise money. It's to get from point A to point B, right? That's what it is. Get from point A to point B. So what you need to know when you're talking to your investors is, I'm raising X dollars to get me from point A to point B with these specific ideas in mind, right? To raise, I need money for a team. I need to hire people. That's why you go out and seek money.
That's why you want to see, because you get that assistance from those people with the connections to get the right people in there. So that's what.
I also challenge one more thing. At that early stage, and if you're being challenged about your management team, meaning your core team, most likely your founding team being incomplete, I don't believe those people go for money. So I don't think that you need the money to hire the people who actually exist. You should be able to find them without money.
Yeah, I'm just foreseeing that.
So that this is the perfect time to actually pitch TIE's mentoring program that we are starting this year.
Well, actually,
So, must apply. There's going to be a quarterly event where we're going to discuss issues. 8 startups are actually going to be selected, and they're going to be coached by a pre-selection of mentors who are going to have a more one-on-one, in-depth conversation on your problems. So, talk to Siddhi or myself after this event, and even any of you guys who are starting a company or already have an existing startup and are interested in getting more in-depth mentoring as you're looking for. So definitely apply. So I'm sorry, next question.
Yeah, so this question is for Darius. So we know that you've raised what I call a sexy round with Sequoia and Eduardo coming on board. For the benefit of everyone here, perhaps, so we mentioned earlier about relationships, right? It's super important, building relationship with potential investors, VCs, and so on and so forth. Maybe to help put things into context, could you share your story on how you built the relationship with these guys and court them, the courtship and stuff?
So I got rejected by Ahmed. And then have no choice but go somewhere else. So that's what happened. It's a true story. I don't know how to answer the question.
Well, let's say with how do you first met him and how do you build on that conversation?
So one of our investors is Eduardo Satran, who's one of the Facebook co-founders. We knew him through a common friend whom I went to school with. So that's just, I don't know, we got lucky or something. And I think one of the things that really connected was because the problem we were trying to solve is a problem he personally faced. I think that matters a lot. So I guess that's about it. Yeah.
So, back over here, this gentleman.
I have a question for both, I guess, the investors and the entrepreneurs. How do you project paying yourself as a co-founder? Especially, let's say you raise a seed round. Paying your salary. So you raise a seed round, you're going for the next round. How do you, what's the sort of like guidelines or, how do you also think about how much you pay yourself?
We pay ourselves, at least up to A, we pay ourselves on a need-to basis. Whatever that needs to get you to survive and not worry about rent and taxi and food, and not $1 more. So that's how we always pay our guys. And it's a different number for different people. Like we have a co-founder who needs to pay American taxes, so he gets more. That's fine. So we really think of it that way, because what we're optimizing for is motivation and efficiency. So that's what we're trying to optimize for.
I think that's a great response, and I'll just probably have a small sort of add to that. I actually don't like teams that come and say, as founders, we're not paying ourselves. Not going to pay ourselves. If you're not taken care of, how do you expect to be working 24 hours a day? So I think, if anybody's telling you they're taking a salary as a no-no, then it's bad advice. Obviously, it needs to be on an as need basis, and that's, you can guess what it can be, right? If you're raising a $100,000 round, how much can you take, man? And so all that is upon discussion and negotiation, but you have to take money. You have to be comfortable for you to give, 200% to the business.
So let's take one more question, and we can then inform you.
To the lady right in front.
Yeah.
So for the seed round, what is the appetite of the investors or shareholders to start?
That's a good question.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So she wants to know what the appetite is for the amount of money that you can raise. Is that right in the seed round? What is it like right now in Singapore as far as that seed round that investors are willing to offer? And the percentage of the company, essentially, if they're not doing a convertible note, the percentage of the company based off of that round. What do you see as averages?
Well, I can answer on. Is this on?
I don't think so.
Oh, it is. Yeah, on JFTI's behalf, their numbers are the first 3 batches, so that's probably around 30 startups. 60% of those were funded to the tune of around $600,000 on average. So obviously 40% received no funding, but 60% did on their first 3 batches. The numbers aren't relevant for the last 2 batches, but possibly JFTI as a strong incubator is not really doesn't give a picture of the whole landscape.
I guess your question was how much dilution.
How much dilution do you
Is
have
that
to
number? What's the average?
What's the average amount? What's the dilution?
That would be interesting.
Look, if you want to
that number is published in JFTI, but I'm sorry, the 60% for the 600,000, but I don't know what's available beyond that.
Amit or Jeffrey and Dennis?
So, I have seen extremes on this, right? So I've seen companies give out 30-40% equity for 100, 200, 300 Ks. I've seen companies give out 15-20% equity for $1 million seed rounds. So there isn't a benchmark, to be honest. Probably 2 points here. One, from our personal experience, as an average, our seed investments, we've taken about 10-15% equity as an average. So we've done $1 million seed rounds, we've done 200K seed rounds, but I think we've taken 10-15% equity. I don't think we've gone above that or below that. So that is hopefully a data point for you guys to refer to. Second, I think, again, I go back to my point regarding sort of building the cap table out. I think when you're sitting down with an investor and talking about dilution, it's important to sit down with them and project the cap table, project the shareholding across multiple rounds, so that both of you can then sit down and see what is that dilution, what equity is he getting and what is it going to be worth, 3 or 4 rounds from there. And I think more likely than not, you will see that people will realize that, even 10% or 12%, 15%, which I believe is the right dilution level for a seed round, will get him significant because he's going in so early. So that, I think, exercise helps. Sometimes investors don't realize what they could make going in so early.
So maybe I think another way of thinking about this is, if you look at the investor's perspective, what they would think is that what would this exit at 3 or 5 years from now? What am I going to own at the end of that chain, and how many times do I have to go in, and what percentage of the pie would I end up having, and whether that's meaningful for my fund life. So I know this is a little bit complicated to think about, but essentially I would say that the percentage may not even be the most important thing, because if the pie is just not big enough, even if the investors own like 80% or 80%. So I don't know whether that makes sense.
No, for sure.
Jeffrey, do you have any thoughts around it?
Okay.
It's an open question. Thank you.
Well, thank you on behalf of TIE and on the audience here. I would like to thank the panelists and the moderator for giving their time on a busy evening. So thank you so much. So once again, guys, I'll re-give my pitch for the mentoring program. So in case any one of you here interested in participating in the mentoring program, please reach out to Siddhi or myself, or anyone which has charter member or just TIE written. We can talk more about the program. Just one last request. Could you guys just move your chairs as you get up towards the back? That'll give more place for everybody to just interact. Thank you so much once again. Thank you.